The morning wind cut across the grasslands like a butcher's blade, carrying with it the scent of sage and the promise of another hard day. Cole Maddox squinted against the rising sun, his weathered hands steady on the reins as he guided the herd down toward the lower pastures. The cattle moved slowly, their breath steaming in the cold air, hooves crushing the frost-brittle grass beneath them. A rider approached from the east, dust trailing behind his mount like smoke. Cole recognized Tom Brennan, the telegraph operator from Cheyenne Forks, before the man was close enough to hail. "Morning, Cole," Tom called out, pulling a folded paper from his coat. "Got news from the railroad office. Thought your PA should see it straight away." Cole took the telegram, his jaw tightening as he read. The railroad was pushing through a new branch line, and the proposed route cut straight through the heart of Maddox land. He'd seen this before, the offers that started friendly enough, then turned to threats when a man said no. "Much obliged, Tom," Cole said, tucking the paper into his vest. "I'll see Pa gets it." The ride back to the ranch house took an hour, the telegram burning like a coal against his chest. His father, Eli Maddox, stood on the porch, rigid as the fence posts he'd driven into this land 30 years back. "Railroad's coming," Cole said simply, handing over the paper. Eli's face darkened as he read, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Vultures," he spat. "Think they can buy a man's sweat with their Eastern money." That evening, with the dust storm rolling in from the west, Cole made his way to the Silver Dollar Saloon in town. The wind howled through the gaps in the buildings, driving grit into every corner. Inside, the air hung thick with tobacco smoke and the sour smell of whiskey. Cole had barely settled at the bar when the doors swung open. A woman entered, her dark traveling cloak heavy with trail dust. Beneath the hood, he caught a glimpse of auburn hair and eyes the color of river stones. She moved with a careful grace, like someone who'd learned to walk quietly through dangerous places. The saloon fell silent. Women were rare enough in the Silver Dollar, but this one, she was something different, beautiful in a way that made men remember their manners or forget them entirely. She approached the bar, pulling a small velvet pouch from beneath her cloak. "I need a room," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of 20 pairs of eyes on her. "I can pay." Jake Morrison, who ran the boarding house as well as the saloon, leaned forward with a gap-toothed grin. "Well now, rooms don't come cheap these days. Railroads brought all sorts of folks through town." The woman opened the pouch, revealing a silver locket and a pair of pearl earrings. "These should more than cover a week's lodging." "Widow's jewelry," someone muttered from a corner table. Cole saw how her shoulders stiffened at the word. Morrison reached for the jewelry, but another hand slammed down on the bar. Silas Greer, one of Kincaid's men, stood there grinning like a coyote over a trapped rabbit. "Now, hold on, Jake," Greer said. "Seems to me this lady might owe Mr. Kincaid some money. Lots of folks coming through town these days, trying to skip out on debts." "I don't owe anyone anything," the woman said, but Cole heard the slight tremor beneath her defiance. "That's so." Greer pulled out a piece of paper, making a show of studying it. "Says here a Mrs. Lila Hart borrowed $50 in Dodge City. You wouldn't be Mrs. Hart, would you?" The woman Lila lifted her chin. "That's a lie." "Well now, that's a serious accusation," Greer said, his hand moving to rest on his pistol. "Mr. Kincaid doesn't take kindly to being called a liar." Cole had seen enough. He pushed away from the bar, stepping between Greer and the woman. "Leave her be, Silas." "This ain't your concern, Maddox." "I'm making it my concern." Cole kept his voice level, his hand casual near his own Colt. "Lady says she doesn't owe Kincaid money. That's good enough for me." Greer's eyes narrowed. "You willing to stake your reputation on that, maybe put your money where your mouth is?" The saloon held its breath. Cole felt the weight of the moment, Knew his next words would echo through the town by morning. His father would rage. The ranch hands would shake their heads. But looking at the woman, at the desperate pride in her eyes, he couldn't walk away. I'll guarantee any debt she might have. Cole said, "Put it in writing if you want, but she gets her room tonight, and you leave her in peace." Greer's grin widened. "Well now, that's mighty generous. Rancher's son gambling his future on a stranger." He pulled out another paper, this one blank. "Jake, get us some ink. Let's make this official." As Cole signed his name to the guarantee, he heard the whispers starting already. "Fool boy," someone said. Pretty Face turned his head. But when he glanced at Lila Hart, he saw something in her eyes that made the risk worthwhile. Not gratitude exactly, but recognition. She knew what he'd just wagered. And she wouldn't forget. Outside, the dust storm raged against the windows. Cole walked Lila to the boarding house stairs, the wind trying to tear the words from his mouth. "Thank you," she said simply. "You didn't have to." "No one has to do anything out here," Cole replied. "That's what makes it matter when they do." She studied his face in the lamplight. "I am running from something, but not a debt, at least not the kind that can be paid with money." "We all got our ghosts," Cole said. "Question is whether you're planning to face them or keep running." "I don't know yet," she admitted. Then, softer, "That paper you signed, what happens if Kincaid decides to call in this manufactured debt?" "Then I handle it," Cole said. "Won't be the first time Kincaid's tried to squeeze blood from a stone." He left her at the stairs and walked back through the storm to where his horse waited. The ride home was cold and dark. The telegram about the railroad still pressed against his chest, now joined by the weight of his impulsive promise. Eli was waiting in the kitchen, a single lamp burning. "Heard you caused a stir in town." News travels fast. Faster when it's about my son making a fool of himself over some woman. Eli's voice was hard as winter ground. "You signed a paper for her. Guaranteed a debt to Kincaid." "It's a false debt. You know that for certain. You know anything about her except she's got a pretty face and trouble following her like a shadow." Cole met his father's glare steadily. "I know Kincaid's a snake and Greer's his fang. That's enough." Eli slammed his fist on the table. "You gambled our reputation. Boy, our good name. For what a stranger who'll be gone by week's end." "Maybe," Cole admitted. "Or maybe I stood up for what's right, the way you taught me." "Don't throw my words back at me," Eli growled. "Right and wrong get muddy when survival's on the line. We got the railroad bearing down on us, drought coming on, and now you've given Kincaid a hold over us." Cole pulled off his hat, running a hand through his hair. "She's running from something. Pa, something bad enough to make her trade her jewelry for a dusty room in Cheyenne Forks. Not our problem. When did we start turning our backs on folks in trouble?" "When the trouble started wearing a pretty dress." Eli shot back. He stood, his shadow large on the wall. "You want to play hero? You do it on your own time. But if this costs us the ranch, if Kincaid uses this to pressure us on the railroad deal, I'll cut you off without a penny. You understand me?" Cole nodded slowly. "I understand." But as he climbed the stairs to his room, he thought about Lila Hart's eyes, the way she'd held her head high even with the whole saloon watching her like wolves. He'd gambled. Sure enough, Rancher's son gambled his heart on a stranger the town would feast on that story for weeks, looking out his window at the storm-darkened land. Cole wondered what kind of trouble followed a woman like that. Come morning, he figured he'd start finding out. The wind howled all night, rattling the windows like something trying to get in. Or maybe, Cole thought as sleep finally took him, like something trying to warn him of what was already here. The road to the Maddox Ranch wound through broken country, all sandstone and scrub brush, with patches of snow still clinging to the north-facing slopes. Cole drove the wagon while Lila sat beside him, her back straight despite the jolting ride. She'd traded her traveling cloak for a plain cotton dress and worn boots, practical clothes that somehow made her beauty more striking, like a diamond set in iron. "That's Devil's Backbone," Cole said, pointing to a ridge of red rock. "Lost 12 head there last winter. Ice storm came through, made everything slick as glass." Lila studied the landscape with eyes that missed nothing. "Beautiful country," she said, "hard, but beautiful." "It'll test you," Cole admitted. "Summer heat'll bake you dry. Winter cold'll freeze you solid. Land doesn't care who you are or where you came from." "Good," she said quietly. "I'm tired of places that do." They crested a rise, and the ranch spread out below them, the main house solid and unpretentious, the barn and outbuildings arranged with practical efficiency. Smoke rose from the kitchen chimney, and Cole could see ranch hands moving among the corrals. "It's not much," he started, but Lila cut him off. "It's honest work on honest land. That's more than most can say." Cole glanced at her, surprised by the fierce approval in her voice. Before he could respond, a black shape launched itself from behind the barn, his father's crow. Prophet, cawing a raucous welcome. The bird circled once before settling on a fence post, fixing Lila with one bright eye. "That's a good sign," Cole said. "Prophet doesn't like most people." "Smart bird," Lila murmured, extending a hand. The crow hopped closer, tilting his head. "We understand each other, don't we, both of us looking for a safe place to land?" At the house, Eli waited on the porch, his expression unreadable. Maria, their cook and housekeeper, stood beside him, curiosity plain on her weathered face. "Pa, Maria," Cole said as he helped Lila down from the wagon. "This is Mrs. Hart. She'll be staying on, helping with the housework." "I can earn my keep," Lila said, meeting Eli's hard gaze directly. "I cook, sew, and I'm not afraid of hard work." Eli studied her for a long moment. "Can you handle stock?" "I can learn. Learning's expensive when the lesson's taught by a half-wild horse or an ornery bull." "Then I'll be careful," Lila said, "but I'll learn." Maria stepped forward, her round face creasing in a smile. "Come, Senora. I'll show you the kitchen. These men think the world stops at the corral fence, but a ranch runs on hot food and mended clothes as much as cattle." Over the next days, Lila proved herself in small, steady ways. She rose before dawn to help Maria with breakfast, feeding a dozen hungry ranch hands without complaint. Her biscuits were light, her coffee strong, and she never flinched when the men tracked mud through her clean kitchen. Cole taught her to ride in the evenings, starting with Buttercup, their gentlest mare. Lila approached the horse with the same quiet determination she brought to everything else. "Don't hold the reins like you're strangling a snake," Cole said, adjusting her grip. "Gentle but firm. Horse needs to know you're in charge without feeling trapped." "Like most things in life," Lila murmured, and Cole caught something dark in her tone. One afternoon, he found her in the barn, trying to lift a saddle onto Buttercup's back. The leather was heavy, awkward, and she struggled with the weight. "Here," Cole said, moving to help. "No." She stepped back, breathing hard. "I need to do this myself." Cole leaned against a stall door, watching as she tried again. This time she got the saddle up, though her arms shook with the effort. "Why does it matter so much?" he asked. Lila paused in tightening the cinch. "My husband used to say I was decorative, like a piece of china pretty to look at, useless for anything else." She pulled the strap tight with sudden force. "I believed him for too long. He was wrong." "Yes," she said simply. "He was wrong about a lot of things." That evening, Cole taught her to shoot. They set up bottles on a fence rail 50 yards from the house, the setting sun turning the glass to amber. Lila held the Winchester awkwardly at first, flinching at the weight. "Stock tight against your shoulder," Cole instructed, standing close enough to adjust her stance. "Breathe out slow, Squeeze the trigger. Don't jerk it. The first shot went wide, kicking up dust 10 feet from the target. The second was closer. By the sixth, she shattered a bottle, and a rare smile lit her face. "Again," she said, and there was something hungry in her voice. They shot until the light faded. Lila, improving with each round. When they finally stopped, her shoulder was bruised, her hands raw, but her eyes held a satisfaction Cole recognized, the look of someone reclaiming pieces of themselves. At supper, Eli watched Lila serve the meal, noting her efficiency, the way the ranch hands had already begun treating her with respect. "Maria says you helped birth a calf this morning," he said. "The mother was struggling," Lila replied, setting down a platter of beef. "Maria showed me what to do. Get your hands dirty." Among other things, she met his gaze steadily. "The calf lived. That's what mattered." Eli grunted, which from him was practically approval. After the meal, he called her outside, in the corral. A young heifer stood with her hours-old calf, the little one unsteady on stick legs. "Calf's not nursing right," Eli said. "Happens sometimes. If it doesn't feed soon, it'll weaken. Die, maybe." Lila looked from Eli to the calf. Understanding this was a test. Without hesitation, she climbed through the fence rails. The mother cow shifted nervously, but Lila moved slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice Cole couldn't quite make out. For the next hour, she worked with patient determination, guiding the calf to nurse, helping it find the right position. Her dress was soon covered in mud and worse, her hair coming loose from its pins, but she never stopped trying. Finally, the calf latched on, its tail switching with satisfaction as it fed. Lila stayed crouched beside it, one hand on its flank, until she was sure it would continue. When she climbed back through the fence, Eli handed her a rag. "You'll do," he said gruffly, and walked away. It was as close to acceptance as he'd ever give, and Lila knew it. She caught Cole watching and shrugged, a wry smile touching her lips. "I've handled worse than a stubborn calf." That night, sitting by the stove with cups of coffee, they talked in the easy way of people learning each other's rhythms. Lila told him about Kansas, about wheat fields that went on forever and summers so hot the air shimmered like water. "Why did you leave?" Cole asked. Lila stared into her cup. "My husband died. Gambling debt caught up with him. The men he owed, they thought I might know where he'd hidden money. I didn't, but they weren't the type to take a woman's word." "The Red Sash Gang?" She looked up sharply. "You've heard of them?" "Everyone has. They run the territory between here and Colorado. Rustling, robbery, worse." Cole set down his cup. "They're after you." "I don't know. Maybe. I've been running for 3 months, never staying anywhere long." She laughed bitterly. "Then I walked into that saloon, and you decided to make my problems yours." "No regrets," Cole said. "You should have them. Your father's right, I'm trouble you don't need." "My father's forgotten what it's like to take a chance on something besides cattle prices and weather." Cole leaned forward. "I haven't—" Lila studied his face in the lamplight. "You're not what I expected from a rancher's son." "What did you expect?" "Arrogance, certainty, the kind of man who thinks the world owes him for being born lucky." She shook her head. "But you're careful, watchful, like someone who's learned that luck runs out." Cole touched the scar on his jaw, a souvenir from the rustlers' raid the year before. "It does. Lost 2 good men that night. Would have lost more if we hadn't been ready." "Is that why you helped me? Because you've seen what happens when no one stands up?" "Maybe," Cole admitted. "Or maybe I just couldn't stand seeing Greer's smile." They sat in comfortable silence until the fire burned low. When Lila finally rose to go to her room, she paused at the door. "Thank you," she said, "for taking the chance. Ask me again in a month." Cole replied, See if we're both still standing." But as he watched her climb the stairs, back straight despite the exhaustion he knew she felt, Cole thought they might just make it. The land would test her. His father would challenge her, and whatever shadows followed from her past would eventually catch up. But there was steel in Lila Hart, hidden beneath the beauty. The West would strike at it like a hammer on an anvil. Cole was curious to see what shape would emerge. Sunday morning broke clear and cold, the kind of day that made the mountains stand out sharp against the sky. Cole helped Lila into the wagon for the trip to town, noting how she'd chosen her plainest dress, her hair pulled back severely. She was armoring herself, he realized, for what was coming. The church bells were already ringing as they rolled down Main Street. Folks in their Sunday best turned to stare, conversations dying mid-sentence. Cole kept his eyes forward, but he felt every gaze like a physical weight. "Let them look," Lila said quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "I've survived worse than curious eyes." At the church, they took a pew near the back. The whispers followed them like smoke. "That's her, the widow from nowhere. Heard she's got Cole Maddox wrapped around her finger. Pretty things usually got the sharpest thorns." Reverend Palmer preached about forgiveness, about casting the first stone, but Cole noticed how his eyes kept drifting to their pew. The Reverend's wife sat rigid as a fence post, her disapproval radiating like heat from a stove. After the service, Cole guided Lila toward the door, but Mrs. Palmer intercepted them, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Mrs. Hart, isn't it?" she said. "How interesting that you found shelter at the Maddox Ranch, though I suppose a woman in your circumstances can't be too particular." "I'm grateful for honest work," Lila replied evenly, "and for people who judge by deeds rather than gossip." Mrs. Palmer's smile tightened. "Indeed, though one wonders what deeds drove you from Kansas, a widow traveling alone, no family, no connections. It does raise questions." "Only in small minds," Cole interjected, his voice carrying enough warning to make Mrs. Palmer step back. They escaped to the churchyard, where other conversations ceased at their approach, by the hitching posts. A group of cowboys made no effort to lower their voices. "Bet she's warming more than the kitchen," one said, earning snickers from his companions. Cole's fist was already clenching when Lila touched his arm. "Don't," she said. "It's what they want proof that I'm causing trouble." They were loading the wagon when Kincaid appeared, flanked by two of his men. He was a big man, gone to fat, but his eyes were shrewd as a banker's. "Maddox," he said, touching his hat brim. "Ma'am, fine day for worship." "Kincaid," Cole acknowledged curtly. "Heard the railroad's been in touch about your land." Kincaid's smile was oily as lamp fuel. "Complicated business, dealing with those Eastern fellows. Man needs friends in times like these. We'll manage." "Course you will, though management gets harder when a man's distracted." His gaze slid to Lila. "Or when old debts come due, that paper you signed for the lady here, generous gesture. Hope it doesn't prove costly. The only cost will be to anyone who tries to collect on false debts." Cole said. Kincaid chuckled. "False. True. Gets murky sometimes. Doesn't it, like trying to separate a woman from her past? Speaking of which, ma'am, you might be interested to know some fellows were asking about you in Laramie. Rough-looking sorts. Had red bandanas, if memory serves." Lila's face stayed calm, but Cole saw her knuckles whiten where she gripped the wagon seat. "If you see them again," Cole said, "tell them Mrs. Hart is under the protection of the Maddox Ranch. Anyone wants to discuss her past can do it with me. My such chivalry," Kincaid mocked. "Your father must be proud. Or has he heard you two had words about your housing arrangement?" They drove away in tense silence. Once clear of town, Lila finally spoke. "He's right. The Red Sash gang, they won't stop looking. I'm putting your whole ranch at risk." Let me worry about that. You can't fight my battles. Cole, you don't even know what they're fighting for. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop beside a creek, the water running low and muddy. Then tell me. Lila climbed down, walking to the water's edge. For a long moment, she stood there, watching the sluggish current. My husband, Nathan, was weak, she finally said, weak and greedy, and convinced he was smarter than everyone else. He got involved with the Red Sash gang, helped them move stolen money through his freight business, kept 2 sets of books, one for the law, one for them. She picked up a stone, turning it in her fingers. When he tried to skim from them, they killed him. But first, he told them he'd hidden $20,000, their money. He claimed he was lying trying to buy time, but they believed him. And they think you know where it is. Nathan told them I did, right before. She threw the stone into the water. Another lie, but the Red Sash gang isn't known for taking a widow's word. That evening at the ranch, the confrontation Cole had been expecting finally came. He found Eli in the barn, mending harnesses by lamplight. Kincaid came by while you were gone, his father said without looking up. Made an offer on the north pasture. Good money. Not enough to be worth dealing with him. Maybe not, but he also mentioned that Greer's been talking. Says the widow's debt is real, that there's papers from Kansas. Says she's running from more than just hard luck. Cole grabbed a harness, working beside his father. She told me about it. Her husband was mixed up with the Red Sash gang. She's not. You believe her? I do. Eli set down his tools, finally meeting Cole's eyes. Boy, you're thinking with everything but your head. That woman is quicksand, and you're sinking fast. I'm trying to do what's right. Right, Eli stood, his voice rising. What's right about risking everything we've built? Your grandfather broke this land. I've spent 30 years holding it, and you're ready to gamble it all on a pretty face and a sad story. It's not about her being pretty, Cole shot back. It's about standing up to men like Kincaid. It's about being the kind of people who help instead of turning away. Eli's hand moved fast, the slap cracking across Cole's face like a whip. Don't you dare lecture me about right and wrong. I've buried friends on this land, fought Indians, outlaws, weather, and bankruptcy. Also, you could have something solid, and this is how you repay it. Cole stood straight, his cheek burning. I'm not throwing anything away, but I'm not turning her out either. Then you're a fool. Eli's voice was cold now. That woman is a curse, mark my words. She'll bring nothing but blood and sorrow to this ranch. You're wrong. Am I? Look at yourself. Fighting with your father, risking our reputation, signing papers for strangers. She's been here a week, and already you're not the son I raised. Maybe that's a good thing, Cole said quietly. The words hung between them like a blade. Eli turned away, shoulders rigid. Get out of my sight. Cole left the barn, his face still stinging. He found himself at the horse corral, gripping the rails hard enough to drive splinters into his palms. The night was clear, stars scattered like spilled salt across the sky. He didn't hear Lila approach until she spoke. I heard the shouting. Family discussion, Cole said bitterly. About me. It wasn't a question. Your father's right. You know, I am bringing trouble. Cole turned to face her. In the moonlight, she looked almost ethereal, but he could see the weight she carried in the line of her shoulders. Everyone brings some kind of trouble, he said. Question is whether they're worth it. And am I worth losing your father, your inheritance? Maybe your life if the Red Sash finds me. Cole studied her face, seeing past the beauty to the steel underneath, the pain she tried so hard to hide. Yes, he said simply. Something shifted in her expression. She stepped closer, reaching up to touch the red mark on his cheek. He hit you because of me. He hit me because he's scared. The railroad, Kincaid. Now it's all pressing in on him. I could leave, she whispered. Tonight, take a horse and go before more damage is done. Is that what you want? What I want hasn't mattered for a long time. It matters to me. She dropped her hand but didn't step back. You barely know me. I know enough. Do you? Do you know I wake up every night, checking the windows? Do you know I can't hear spurs without remembering Nathan's blood on the floor? Do you know that sometimes I think I'm cursed, that everyone who tries to help me ends up... Cole caught her hands, feeling them tremble. I know you're the strongest woman I've ever met. I know you work harder than any 2 ranch hands. I know you're trying to build something new from the ashes of something that burned. And if those ashes blow back on you, on everyone here, then we'll face it together. Lila looked at him for a long moment, then placed her palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Neither spoke, but something passed between them, not quite a promise, but an understanding. They stood there until the cold drove them inside, each to their separate rooms. But that night, when the sound of approaching horses made Prophet caw in alarm, Cole was already reaching for his rifle, at her window. Lila watched the darkness, a derringer in her hand. The riders passed without stopping, but the message was clear. The past was circling closer, drawn by the scent of unfinished business. Come morning, there would be preparations to make, defenses to shore up, but for now, in the fragile peace of night, Cole and Lila kept their separate vigils, united by a danger they could feel gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. The rancher's son had gambled his heart on a stranger, and now the dice were rolling toward an outcome nobody could predict. The rain came sudden and hard from the mountains, turning the dry creek beds into churning torrents of mud and debris. Cole had seen flash floods before, but this one caught them with 30 head of young calves grazing in the low valley where the grass grew sweetest. Move, move, Cole shouted over the roar of water, spurring his horse down the treacherous slope. Beside him, young Jed Hawkins rode with the fearless confidence of his 19 years, whooping as his mount slid and scrambled through the loose shale. Lila had insisted on coming when she heard the calves were in danger. Now she fought her horse through the rising water, her split skirt soaked and heavy, hair plastered to her face by the driving rain. The calves huddled on a shrinking island of high ground, bawling in terror as the flood rose around them. Brown water thick as gravy swirled past, carrying branches, fence posts, and the bloated carcass of some unlucky animal. Rope the lead calf, Cole called to Jed. If we can get her moving, the others might follow. Jed's loop sailed true, settling around a young heifer's neck, but as he tried to lead her to safety, a massive pine trunk came spinning down the flood, branches reaching like grasping fingers. Jed, watch out! Lila screamed. The log struck Jed's horse broadside, sending both animal and rider into the churning water. Jed's head disappeared beneath the muddy surface, his hat spinning away in the current. Without hesitation, Cole plunged his horse into the flood. The water hit like a cold fist, trying to tear him from the saddle. He caught a glimpse of Jed's hand breaking the surface and lunged for it, nearly losing his seat as his horse fought the current. On the bank, Lila had already tied her rope to a sturdy cottonwood. She waded in waist-deep, playing out line as Cole struggled to reach the drowning boy. The water was ice-cold, numbing, full of debris that struck like clubs. Cole's hand closed on Jed's wrist just as another surge tried to tear them apart. He hauled the boy up, Jed coughing and sputtering, eyes wide with terror. But Cole's horse was weakening, and he felt his grip on the saddle slipping. "The rope!" Lila shouted, and Cole saw it. She'd thrown the end within reach. He grabbed it with his free hand just as his horse went under. The current slammed them into a half-submerged boulder. Cole felt his shoulder wrench from its socket, white-hot agony shooting down his arm. But he held on to Jed, to the rope, to consciousness. Lila hauled on the line, her boots slipping in the mud, crying out with effort. Somehow, she dragged them close enough to shore for Cole to find footing. They stumbled onto solid ground, Jed retching muddy water, Cole's left arm hanging useless, Your shoulder, Lila said, her hands already examining the damage. Dislocated, Cole gasped. Had it happened before? Need to... I know. Her face was pale but determined. Jed, hold him steady. Before Cole could protest, she gripped his arm and wrenched it back into place. The world went white, then black at the edges. When his vision cleared, Lila was binding his arm with strips torn from her petticoat. The calves, he managed. Let them go, she said firmly. We've lost enough today. They made it back to the ranch as darkness fell. Jed riding double with Lila. Cole slumped over his saddle horn. Eli met them at the barn, his face going from anger to alarm as he took in their condition. Get him inside, was all he said. That night, as Maria fussed over hot soup and dry clothes, Lila sat by Cole's bed, her own hands wrapped in bandages from rope burns. She had been quiet since the flood, staring at nothing, and Cole recognized the look memories rising like floodwater. You saved Jed's life, he said. She shook her head. We saved him, together. Your hands will heal. She finally met his eyes. Cole, when I saw you go under, when I thought... Her voice broke. Nathan drowned, not in a flood, in 3 inches of muddy water, face down behind a saloon. They held him there until he stopped moving. Cole reached out with his good hand, covering hers. I'm not Nathan. No, she whispered. You're not. You're good and brave and foolish enough to risk everything for others. And that terrifies me more than any threat. Why? Because She stopped, pulling her hand away. I should check on Jed. She left before he could respond, but her unfinished words hung in the air like smoke. Cole lay back, shoulder throbbing, thinking about the feel of her hand in his and the fear in her eyes, not of the flood, but of something else entirely. The next morning brought sun and a new kind of flood paper. Sheriff Calder arrived with a wanted poster, his weathered face grim. Thought you should see this, he said, handing it to Cole on the porch. The poster showed a rough sketch of a woman that could have been anyone, but the description was specific. Wanted for questioning Mrs. Lila Hart, widow of Nathan Hart. Possible knowledge of stolen funds belonging to the Red Sash Gang. Reward for information leading to recovery of $20,000. It's not a warrant, Calder said carefully. Just questions. But Cole, that gang, they don't ask questions gentle-like. You planning to collect that reward? Sheriff. Calder spat tobacco juice off the porch. I enforce the law, not bounties, but others won't be so particular. That poster's gone up from here to Denver. After the sheriff left, Cole found Lila in the kitchen, kneading bread with violent energy. He set the poster on the table. She glanced at it, her hands never stopping their work. So now you know, she said. Your father was right. I'm poison. You're not. Stop. She turned on him, flour dusting her cheeks like war paint. Stop defending me. Stop believing in me. Stop making me hope for things I can't have. Like what? Like a life here. Like peace. Like... She gestured helplessly between them. Like whatever this is becoming. Cole stepped closer, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. What if I don't want to stop? Then you're a fool. Already established that. Question is, are you staying or running? Lila's hand stilled on the dough. If I stay, they'll come. The gang, bounty hunters, anyone who thinks I can lead them to money that doesn't exist. Then we'll be ready. You can't fight them all. Watch me. She laughed, but it was bitter. You sound like Nathan. He thought he could outsmart them too. I'm not trying to outsmart anyone. Cole said, I'm trying to protect what matters. This ranch, our people. He paused. You. I'm not yours to protect. No, he agreed. But you could be. The words landed between them like a match on dry timber. Lila's eyes widened, her flower-covered hands rising as if to ward him off. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't offer things that'll be ripped away." "I'm not offering anything except a chance. Stay, fight, build something worth defending. And if fighting isn't enough, if the cost is too high, then at least we'll have tried." That evening, Eli called a meeting in the main room. The ranch hands gathered Tom Bradley, Will Reeves, the recovered Jed, and old Sam Crenshaw. Maria stood by the fireplace while Lila sat apart, trying to make herself small. "You all seen the poster," Eli said bluntly. "You know what's coming. Any man wants to draw his pay and leave. No hard feelings." The men exchanged glances. Tom Bradley, spokesman by nature, cleared his throat. Mr. Maddox, we've rode for the brand through drought, blizzards, and rustlers. Some Eastern gang don't change that." "This is different," Eli warned. "This is bringing trouble to our door." "Trouble's been scratching at that door since the railroad started nosing around," Will said. "Leastways, now we know what face it's wearing." Old Sam spat into the fireplace. "That woman pulled young Jed from the flood. Far as I'm concerned, she's earned her place." Lila looked up, tears threatening. "I don't deserve—" "Ain't about deserving," Sam interrupted. "It's about doing. You've done right by us. We do right by you. That's the code out here." Eli studied his men, then nodded slowly. "So be it. We make ready. Double the night watches. Guns loaded and within reach. Anyone rides up we don't know." They state their business from distance. As the meeting broke up, Cole caught his father's arm. "Thank you." Eli's expression was stone. "I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for the ranch. These vultures smell weakness. They'll pick us clean land, cattle, everything." He paused. "But that woman's got bottom to her. I'll grant that. Might be you didn't gamble as foolish as I thought. Might be I learned from the best." Eli almost smiled. "Get that shoulder looked at proper. We'll need every gun hand working." That night, Cole found Lila on the porch, watching the stars. She'd traded her apron for her rifle, and it lay across her lap like a sleeping cat. "Quite a day," he said, settling beside her. "They stood up for me," she said wonderingly. "Those men, they barely know me." "They know enough. You're one of us now." She turned to him, starlight catching the tears on her cheeks. "I've been running so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to have people willing to stand with you." "Better get used to it." She leaned against his good shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the night. Somewhere in the darkness, danger gathered like thunderheads. But for now, for this moment, they had each other and the stubborn courage of people who'd chosen to make a stand. "Cole," she said softly. "Yeah. Whatever happens, I want you to know meeting you was worth it. All of it." He pressed his lips to her hair, breathing in the scent of flower and sunshine and something uniquely hers. "We're going to get through this. Promise. I'm a gambling man. Remember, I only bet on sure things." She laughed quietly. "Liar." "Maybe, but I'm your liar now." And in the vast Wyoming darkness, with danger circling ever closer, that was enough. The drought came hard on the heels of the flood, as if the land had used up all its water in one violent purge. The grass turned brittle yellow. The pond shrank to a muddy wallow, and red dust settled over everything like dried blood. The cattle grew gaunt, their ribs showing through their hides like washboards. Cole stood with his father on the rise overlooking their domain, watching the sunset paint the dying landscape crimson. Below, the diminished herd clustered around what was left of the water, their lowing a constant, mournful sound. "We'll have to sell," Eli said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Half the herd, maybe more. Take whatever price we can get. Kincaid will offer pennies on the dollar." Pennies are better than dead cattle. Eli's jaw worked like he was chewing bitter medicine. Unless you got another plan. Cole didn't answer. They both knew there were no good options when the sky turned to brass and the earth to powder. It was the mathematics of survival, subtract what you must to save what you can. At the house, Lila had transformed the kitchen into a battlefield against waste. Every drop of water was used twice, 3 times if possible. She'd learned to cook with half the fuel, stretch meals to feed the hands who stayed even as their wages shrank. "Soup's ready," she announced as the men trooped in, dust falling from them like snow. Her hands were cracked and bleeding from the lye soap, but she served each man with the dignity of a queen holding court. "Bless you, ma'am," Tom Bradley said, accepting his bowl. "Don't know how you make grass soup taste like beef stew." "Secret ingredients," Lila replied, but Cole saw the worry in her eyes. They were down to beans, dried beef, and whatever game the men could shoot. The vegetable garden she'd started had withered despite her desperate watering. In town the next day, the full weight of their situation became clear. The stock buyers had set up at the railroad depot, and desperate ranchers lined up with their herds like penitents seeking absolution. Cole recognized the predatory gleam in the buyers' eyes. They smelled blood in the water. $15 a head, the buyer told Jake Morrison, who'd brought his prize breeding stock. "Take it or leave it." "They're worth 50 in a good year," Morrison protested. "This ain't a good year." Cole was negotiating for his own smaller bunch when Kincaid appeared, resplendent despite the dust in a black suit that made him look like an undertaker. "Difficult times," Kincaid observed. "Watching Morrison accept the insulting price makes a man reconsider his options." "Our options are fine," Cole said curtly. "Are they your father's looking older these days? The strain, no doubt, and that extra mouth to feed." Kincaid's smile was sharp as a skinning knife. "I could help, buy your land at a fair price. You could start fresh somewhere else. Take the widow with you." "Not interested." "Pride's expensive in a drought. Boy, how many cattle you planning to watch die before you see sense?" At the general store, Lila was settling accounts, her face carefully neutral as Mrs. Henderson tallied the bill. "That's $43, the shopkeeper announced loudly enough for other customers to hear. "Credit's tight these days, what with the drought and all." Lila counted out coins carefully. "35 is what I have. I can work off the rest sewing, washing, whatever you need." Mrs. Henderson's mouth pursed like she'd bitten a lemon. "I suppose that would be acceptable, though one wonders why a woman in your situation doesn't have better resources." "My situation," Lila said evenly, "is that I work for my living, just like everyone else here." A younger woman near the fabric counter sniffed audibly. "Some kinds of work pay better than others, I hear." The store went quiet. Lila's hand stilled on her purse, and Cole saw her shoulders straighten. "Sarah Mills," Lila said, turning to face her accuser. "Your husband drinks at the Silver Dollar every Friday, loses more at cards than you spend on ribbons. Maybe you should concern yourself with your own household before commenting on others." Sarah flushed red, and Mrs. Henderson suddenly found the ledger fascinating. Cole felt a surge of pride at Lila's quiet strength, even as he noted the exhaustion in her bearing. Outside, loading supplies, they were approached by Emma Patterson, the banker's daughter. She was near Lila's age, pretty in a delicate way, with nervous hands that fluttered like birds. "Mrs. Hart," Emma spoke quietly, glancing around. "I wondered if you might teach me." "Teach you what?" Lila asked, surprised. "To shoot, to ride properly, to be—" Emma gestured helplessly. "Strong, like you." "I'm not strong," Lila said. "I'm just too stubborn to break." "That's what I want to learn?" Before Lila could respond, Emma's mother appeared, face pinched with disapproval. "Emma, come away this instant." She grabbed her daughter's arm, hissing, "Associating with that woman will ruin your reputation." "My reputation won't feed me if Charles leaves or dies." Emma shot back, surprising everyone. "At least Mrs. Hart can take care of herself." As the Pattersons departed in a flurry of argument, Lila watched them go with a sad understanding. "She's right, about Charles. He's been making eyes at the saloon girls." "How do you know that?" "Women like me learn to read the signs. It's a survival skill." She climbed onto the wagon seat. "That girl needs help, but her mother would rather preserve appearances than prepare her for reality." The ride home was quiet, both lost in thought. As they crested the final hill, Cole saw riders at the ranch, not the threatening kind, but neighbors. The Bakers from the next spread, the Johnsons from further east. Their wagons were loaded with what looked like supplies. "What's this?" Eli asked as the neighbors gathered in the yard. Jim Baker, a taciturn man who rarely spoke above a whisper, cleared his throat. "Heard you folks were standing against the Red Sash gang. Figured if trouble's coming, better to face it together." His wife added, "Besides, that Mrs. Hart helped birth my grandson when the doc was drunk. We pay our debts." More stories emerged. Lila had quietly helped throughout the county, teaching letters to ranch children, nursing sick livestock, sharing what little they had. Without fanfare or expectation, she'd woven herself into the fabric of their community. "We can't pay you," Eli said gruffly, clearly moved. "Drought's got us all by the throat." "Ain't about pay," Johnson said. "It's about doing right. The Maddox Ranch falls to vultures like Kincaid. We're all next." That evening, as the neighbors set up camp in the yard, Lila found a moment alone with Cole by the corral. The sunset painted her face gold, but he could see the toll the weeks had taken the hollows under her eyes, the thinness of her wrists. "They came because of you," he said. She shook her head. "They came because of what this place represents. Independence, integrity, the chance to build something without men like Kincaid bleeding them dry. You're part of what it represents now." She leaned against the fence, watching the horses. "Your father lost 3 more cattle today, found them down by the dry creek. This drought, it's killing everything slowly." "We'll survive." "Will we, even if the Red Sash doesn't come? Even if Kincaid doesn't force your hand, how long can the ranch last without rain?" Cole moved closer, covering her work-worn hand with his. "As long as it takes." "You can't fight the sky, Cole." "No, but I can fight everything else." He turned her to face him. "Lila, whatever comes, drought, gangs, Kincaid, I want to face it with you. Not as my father's employee, not as someone under my protection, as my wife." The word hung between them like a challenge. Lila's eyes widened, then filled with tears. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to stay, to fight, to build something with me even if we lose everything else." "I've got nothing to bring to a marriage except trouble and empty hands." "You've got yourself. That's all I need." She searched his face, looking for doubt, for regret, for anything except the steady certainty she found there. "The town will talk. Your father." "We'll come around, and the town's been talking since you arrived. At least now they'll have something true to gossip about." A laugh escaped her, half sob. "You're impossible." "That a yes?" Instead of answering, she pulled his head down and kissed him, tasting of dust and desperation and hope. Around them, the dying land stretched toward darkness, but in that moment, they were an oasis of possibility. When they broke apart, Eli was standing on the porch, his expression unreadable. He studied them for a long moment, then spoke. "If you're going to court my son proper, Mrs. Hart, you'll do it where I can keep an eye on things. No more sneaking around like teenagers." It was as close to a blessing as they'd get, and Lila's smile was radiant through her tears. Yes, sir. As the stars emerged in the drought-clear sky, the ranch settled into watchful rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more cattle to sell, more wells to dig deeper, more prayers for rain that might not come. But tonight, surrounded by neighbors who'd chosen solidarity over safety, Cole and Lila sat together on the porch steps. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and for a few precious hours, the future seemed less like a threat and more like a promise worth fighting for. The drought would break, or it wouldn't. The gang would come, or they wouldn't. But whatever happened, they'd face it together not as a rancher's son and a desperate widow, but as two people who'd found something worth preserving in a land that consumed the weak and tested the strong. In the distance, a coyote howled, and the sound seemed less like a lament and more like a declaration of stubborn survival against all odds. The first sign came at dawn, fresh hoof prints in the dust around the ranch perimeter. Too many to be drifters passing through. Tom Bradley found them on his morning rounds and rode hard back to the house, his face grim beneath the brim of his hat. They circled us in the night, he reported to Cole and Eli on the porch. 8, maybe 10 riders. Found where they stopped to watch the house from that rise to the north. Cole studied the horizon, his hand instinctively checking his Colt. They're scouting, testing our defenses. Or sending a message, Eli added. He'd aged years in the past weeks, but his eyes were sharp as ever. They want us to know they're here. By the corral gate, they found their confirmation, a young calf. Throat cut clean, laid out like an offering. Pinned to the gate with a knife was a playing card, the ace of spades, with red sash scrawled across it in what looked like dried blood. Lila stood frozen when she saw it, her face draining of color. That's Caleb Voss's calling card. He used to leave them after... She swallowed hard. After he finished with someone. Sheriff Calder arrived by midday. His jurisdiction stretched thin as wire. He studied the scene with professional detachment, but Cole could see the worry in the set of his shoulders. I can deputize some men, Calder offered. But the Red Sash gang's got maybe 20 riders. They hit the Wells Fargo office in Laramie last month, killed 2 guards. We're not asking you to fight our battle, Eli said. Just wanted on record what's happening here. Calder nodded slowly. I'll wire the territorial marshal, but don't expect miracles. These are lawless times. He turned to Lila. Ma'am, I've got to ask official-like, do you know where Nathan Hart hid that money? No, Lila said firmly. Nathan lied to save his skin. There is no hidden money. I believe you, but believing won't stop bullets. The sheriff mounted his horse. If I were you folks, I'd fort up tight. Maybe consider that offer from Kincaid. Live to fight another day. After he left, Cole gathered the hands. They had 8 men total. Counting himself and Eli, not enough for a stand-up fight, but maybe enough to make the cost too high. We'll run patrols in pairs. Cole instructed. No one rides alone. Guns loaded and ready. Anyone spots riders. Fire 2 shots to signal. That evening, Cole proposed using the old grain warehouse at Sawyer's Canyon as bait. It's defensible. Good sight lines. We spread word we're moving a valuable shipment there. Using Lila as bait, Eli interrupted. That's what you're really saying. I won't hide while others fight for me, Lila said quietly. She'd been cleaning rifles all afternoon, her movements precise and mechanical. If my presence draws them out, so be it. It's suicide, Will Reeves protested. That canyon's a bottle. They could pin us down. Or we could pin them, Cole countered. The walls are stone. There's only one way in or out. With shooters on the rim. They argued tactics until moonrise, finally settling on Cole's plan with modifications. Half their force would take position on the canyon walls before dawn. The others would ride escort with Lila, making themselves visible, tempting targets. That night, Cole found Lila in the barn, saddling her horse in the lamplight. She'd changed into riding clothes, split skirt, boots, a man's shirt that made her look younger. more vulnerable. "You don't have to do this," he said. She didn't stop her preparations. "Yes, I do. They won't stop until they have me. At least this way. We choose the ground. And if something goes wrong, if they don't take the bait, or bring more men than we expect..." She turned to face him then, and he saw she was trembling, but her voice was steady. "Then I'll finally stop running, one way or another." He pulled her close, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. "I won't let them take you. You might not have a choice." She pulled back to look at him. "Cole, if something happens tomorrow..." "Nothing's going to happen. Listen to me." Her hands gripped his arms. "If something happens, don't blame yourself. Don't let it twist you into something hard and bitter. This land needs men like you men who'll stand for what's right even when it costs everything." "Lila?" She kissed him, fierce and desperate, tasting of tears and determination. When they broke apart, she pressed something into his hand, her wedding ring from Nathan. "I want you to have this," she said, "not as a token of the past, but as a promise. If we survive tomorrow, I'll marry you. We'll build that life you talked about." "When we survive," he corrected, slipping the ring into his pocket. "When, not if." They made their preparations in the pre-dawn darkness. Tom Bradley and 3 men took positions on the canyon rim, rifles ready. Cole, Eli, Lila, and the remaining hands formed the escort party, making no effort to hide their movements. The sun was barely up when they set out, Lila riding in the middle of their formation like precious cargo. The morning was still, the air already warm with the promise of another scorching day. Every shadow could hide a threat, every rock formation a sniper's nest. They were halfway to the canyon when the attack came. The first shot took Will Reeves's hat off. The second sparked off a rock near Eli's horse. Then the Red Sash riders erupted from the ravines on both sides, whooping and firing. Cole counted 12, maybe 15 more than expected, but not impossible odds. "Ride!" Cole shouted, spurring toward the canyon. "Stay together." The running fight was chaos dust and gun smoke, the scream of horses, the crack of rifles. Jed Hawkins took a bullet in the shoulder but stayed in his saddle. Old Sam Crenshaw's horse went down, and Eli wheeled back to pull him up behind. Lila rode low over her horse's neck, her face set with grim determination. When a Red Sash rider got too close, she straightened and fired, the Winchester kicking against her shoulder. The man tumbled from his saddle, and she levered another round without hesitation. They made the canyon entrance at a dead run, the stone walls rising around them like a funnel. Behind them, the Red Sash riders hesitated, sensing the trap but driven by greed and bloodlust. Then Tom Bradley and his men opened fire from above. The canyon became a killing ground, caught between the defenders below and the riflemen above. The Red Sash gang found themselves in the trap they'd planned to spring. Men and horses fell, the survivors scrambling for cover that didn't exist. Through the dust and confusion, Cole saw him Caleb Voss, sitting his black horse like death himself, his red sash bright as blood across his chest. The gang leader's eyes found Lila, and his face split in a wolf's grin. "Hello, pretty widow," Voss called out, his voice carrying over the gunfire. "Your husband squealed like a pig when we held him under. Bet you will too." Lila went rigid, her rifle trembling. Cole saw her freeze, paralyzed by memory and fear. Voss spurred forward, pistol raised, and time seemed to slow. Cole's shot took Voss in the gun arm, spinning him half out of his saddle. But the outlaw was tough as old leather. He switched hands and kept coming, hatred burning in his eyes. It was Lila who ended it. She raised her rifle with deliberate calm, sighted carefully, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet caught Voss center mass, and he toppled backward, his red sash fluttering like a fallen flag. With their leader down, the remaining Red Sash riders broke. They fled the canyon in disorder, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Tom Bradley's men picked off 2 more as they ran, but Cole called off pursuit. They'd won enough for one day. In the sudden quiet, Lila sat her horse like a statue, the Winchester still raised. Cole approached carefully, speaking soft as he would to a spooked mare. "It's over," he said. "Lila, it's finished." She lowered the rifle slowly, her eyes finding his. "I shot him. I looked at him and I shot him and I felt—" "Nothing. What does that make me?" "Alive," Cole said simply. "It makes you alive." Sheriff Calder arrived as they were loading the wounded, their own, and the captured outlaws into wagons. He surveyed the scene with professional approval. "Clean work," he said. "Voss has been wanted in 3 territories. There'll be a reward." "Give it to the widows," Eli said gruffly. "We didn't do this for money." As they rode back to the ranch, Lila was quiet, her face thoughtful rather than triumphant. Cole knew she was processing what had happened, what she'd done, what it meant for her future. That evening, as Maria tended the wounded and the hands celebrated their survival, Cole found Lila standing by the grave they'd dug for their losses. Will Reeves had died of his wounds, and they'd buried him as the sun set. "He had a girl in town," Lila said softly. "They were planning to marry come spring. He died protecting what he believed in. There's honor in that." "Is there? Or did he die because I brought my troubles to your door?" She turned to face him, tears streaming. "How many more? Cole, how many more will pay for my past?" "This wasn't your fault. Voss and his kind, they're like drought or disease. They come whether we invite them or not. What matters is we stood against them." "And won. This time?" She wiped her eyes. "But there'll be others. Bounty hunters, glory seekers, men who think a widow alone is easy prey." "You're not alone," Cole reminded her. "You'll never be alone again." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple silver band, not her old wedding ring, but a new one. "I bought this in town last week, before all this. I was going to surprise you, but then—" She held it out. "I meant what I said. If you'll still have me, knowing what I am, what I've done." Cole took the ring, then took her hand. "I know exactly what you are. You're the woman who saved Jed from drowning, who faced down the town gossips, who stood with us against killers and never faltered. You're the woman I want to build a life with." Under the vast Wyoming sky, with the smell of gunpowder still hanging in the air and their future uncertain as ever, Cole slipped the ring onto her finger. It wasn't romantic in any storybook way. They were dusty, exhausted, grieving their losses. But it was real, forged in hardship and tested by fire. "When?" she asked simply. "Soon as the preacher can make it out, unless you want to wait." "No," she said firmly. "No more waiting. We've earned whatever happiness we can grab." They stood together as the stars emerged. 2 people who'd found each other across violence and loss. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Kincaid still circled like a vulture. The drought still choked the land. And Voss's death might bring more trouble than it solved. But tonight, they had each other in the knowledge that they'd faced the worst and survived, in a land that tested every soul who dared call it home. That was no small victory. The letter from the territorial prosecutor arrived on a Tuesday, carried by a dusty rider who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Cole read it twice before handing it to his father, watching Eli's face darken with each line. "They want evidence," Eli said flatly. "Paper evidence that Kincaid's been washing money for the gangs. Without it, they won't move against him." "Then we get it," Cole said. "From where you planning to walk into Kincaid's office and ask nicely?" They were still arguing when Lila entered, carrying coffee. She set the pot down and picked up the letter, reading quickly. When she finished, a strange expression crossed her face, part fear, part determination. "I could do it," she said quietly. Both men turned to stare. "Do what?" Cole asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Get the evidence. Kincaid's been advertising for a bookkeeper. someone with neat handwriting to copy ledgers. She held up her hands. I learned accounts from my mother. She kept books for a shipping company before she married. Absolutely not, Cole said immediately. It's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous, Lila countered. But this is something I can do. Something that uses my skills instead of just hiding behind yours. Kincaid's not stupid, Eli warned. He'll suspect. A widow looking for respectable work after the red sash is gone and my reputation is somewhat cleared. Lila shook her head. It's the perfect cover. He'll think I'm distancing myself from the ranch to salvage my respectability. Cole paced the room like a caged wolf. And if he realizes what you're doing, if one of his men recognizes you're copying more than you should, then I'll get out. We'll set signals. A red handkerchief in the window if I need help immediately. She moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Cole, we can't fight Kincaid with guns. He owns too many people, has too much protection, but paper can destroy him. The plan took shape over the next days. Lila would apply for the position, presenting herself as seeking independence after her recent troubles. Sheriff Calder, who owed Cole for helping capture the Red Sash remnants, agreed to mention to Kincaid that the widow Hart seemed eager to leave ranch life behind. I don't like it, Calder said. But if you can get me proof of money laundering, I'll have grounds to arrest him that even his bought judges can't ignore. The morning Lila left for town, dressed in her most conservative dress with her hair pulled back severely. Cole caught her at the door. You don't have to prove anything, he said. Not to me, not to anyone. I'm not proving anything, she replied, adjusting her gloves with steady hands. I'm ending this. Kincaid is the real threat to the ranch, to us, to everyone trying to build honest lives here. The Red Sash was just his tool. She kissed him quickly and climbed into the wagon before he could argue further. Cole watched her go with a cold knot in his stomach, remembering another morning when Nathan Hart had left and never come back. Kincaid's office occupied the second floor of the bank building, all polished wood and thick carpets that swallowed sound. Lila sat across from him, keeping her expression carefully neutral as he studied her over steepled fingers. Mrs. Hart, he said, drawing out her name like he was tasting wine. Your reputation precedes you. I'm sure it does. Lila replied calmly, which is why I'm seeking legitimate employment. I need to support myself without depending on the charity of others. Charity? Is that what you call your arrangement with young Maddox? Mister, Maddox was kind enough to help me when I needed it, but a woman must think of her future. Mr. Kincaid, surely you understand that. His smile was thin as paper. Indeed, and you claim to have bookkeeping experience. Lila produced the references she'd prepared forged, but believable. My mother taught me. I helped her with accounts until I married. Show me, Kincaid said, pushing a ledger across the desk. Copy this page. Let me see your hand. For the next 20 minutes, Lila copied columns of figures in her neat, precise script. She felt Kincaid watching her, weighing and measuring. When she finished, he examined her work with a jeweler's eye. Adequate, he pronounced. You can start tomorrow. The pay is $2 a day, and you'll work from 8 until 6. Any questions? Just one, Lila said, meeting his gaze directly. Why hire me? You must know it will cause talk. Kincaid's smile widened. My dear Mrs. Hart, I collect useful people. You've proven yourself quite resourceful. Who knows, working together, we might find mutual benefits beyond simple employment. The threat was subtle but clear. Lila nodded as if considering his words, then rose gracefully. Until tomorrow, then. The first week passed slowly. Lila copied legitimate ledgers, noting the rhythm of the office, the habits of Kincaid's men. She was watched constantly at first, but gradually, as she proved herself efficient and unobtrusive, the scrutiny relaxed. It was on the 9th day that she found it a second set of books, hidden in a false bottom drawer she discovered while cleaning. Her heart hammered as she scanned the entries. Names, dates, amounts, a clear record of money flowing from the Red Sash Gang through Kincaid's operations and into legitimate investments. She couldn't copy it all, not without being caught, but over the next days, she memorized key entries during her lunch breaks, jotting them down in a small notebook she hid in her petticoats. Each evening, she transcribed what she'd learned into a growing document at the boarding house. The danger came from an unexpected source. Marcus Webb, one of Kincaid's gunmen, had taken an interest in her. He lounged by her desk, making conversation that grew bolder each day. "Pretty woman like you shouldn't be wasting away over dusty books," he said one afternoon, perching on her desk edge. "How about dinner? I know a place serves beef that ain't tough as boot leather." "That's kind of you, Mr. Webb, but I prefer to keep my employment and social life separate." "Come now," he persisted, reaching out to touch her hand. "Man gets lonely, so does a widow. I bet." Lila pulled her hand back, but kept her voice level. "Mr. Webb, I'm sure Mr. Kincaid wouldn't appreciate you disturbing his bookkeeper during working hours." Webb's face darkened, but before he could respond, Kincaid's voice cut through the office. "Webb, my office, now." As the gunman stalked away, Kincaid approached her desk. "My apologies, Mrs. Hart. Marcus sometimes forgets his manners." "It's no matter," Lila said, returning to her ledger. "Oh, but it is." Kincaid's voice was silk over steel. "I protect my investments, all of them." That evening, Lila placed the red handkerchief in her window. Within an hour, Cole was at her door, slipping inside quickly. "What happened?" She showed him her notes, hands trembling slightly. "I have enough names, dates, proof of money laundering, but Webb is getting aggressive. And Kincaid, he knows something. The way he looks at me." "We're getting you out, tonight." "No. One more day. There's a ledger entry about a large transfer happening tomorrow. If I can document that." "Damn the ledger!" Cole gripped her shoulders. "You've done enough." "Have I enough to ensure he can't buy his way out, enough to protect the ranch permanently?" She covered his hands with hers. "One more day, Cole. Then it's finished." Against his better judgment, Cole agreed, but he stationed Tom Bradley across from the bank, watching for trouble. The next morning, Lila arrived to find the office in upheaval. A federal marshal had arrived unexpectedly, asking questions about recent cattle sales. Kincaid was in his office with the door closed, voices raised in argument. It was the perfect opportunity. Lila slipped into the private files. Finding the transfer document, $30,000 from Eastern investors, she recognized the code name for stolen Army payroll into railroad development funds. She was copying frantically when the door opened. Marcus Webb stood there, his face split by an ugly grin. "Well, well, little widow's got curious fingers." Lila straightened slowly, mind racing. "Mr. Kincaid asked me to retrieve the Morrison account files." "Did he now?" Webb moved closer, backing her against the desk. "Funny, since he's been in with that marshal for an hour. Think you're lying. Pretty widow, think you're spying." "You're mistaken." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. "Let's go ask Kincaid together, shall we?" Lila's free hand found the letter opener on the desk. She brought it up fast, slashing across Webb's arm. He cursed and released her, blood spattering the ledgers. She ran, Webb's shouts raising the alarm behind her, down the stairs, through the bank lobby where customers turned to stare, out into the blazing sunlight where Tom Bradley was already mounting his horse. "Ride," Tom shouted, firing over the heads of Kincaid's men as they spilled from the building. Lila hiked up her skirts and vaulted onto the horse Cole had insisted she keep tied outside. They galloped through town, citizens scattering. Sheriff Calder emerging from his office just in time to see Kincaid's men giving chase. At the ranch, Lila thrust her notebook and the copied documents at Cole. "Here, everything's here. Get it to the sheriff." Cole passed the papers to Jed. "Ride hard to Calder. Tell him to wire the federal marshal we've got what they need." As Jed spurred away, Cole turned to Lila. She was disheveled, her neat bookkeeper's appearance destroyed, a wildness in her eyes he'd never seen before. "You cut Webb?" "I marked him," she said with grim satisfaction. "He won't forget me." "Neither will Kincaid. You realize what you've done. He'll come for us now. All of us." "Good." Lila's chin lifted defiantly. "I'm tired of waiting for attacks. Let him come. We have the truth now." Cole pulled her close, feeling her heart race against his chest. "You magnificent, reckless woman!" "I learned from the best," she murmured against his shoulder. "Now what?" "Now we ford up and wait. Either the law does its job, or we finish this ourselves." As the sun set, painting the sky the color of blood and flame, the Maddox Ranch prepared for siege. But this time, they had more than guns and courage. They had proof, documented in Lila's careful hand, that might finally bring justice to a land where it was often in short supply. The rancher's son had gambled on a stranger, and she'd proven herself worth any risk. Now they would see if the law was strong enough to cage a man like Kincaid, or if justice would need to come from the barrel of a gun. Either way, Lila thought as she loaded her Winchester, she was done running, done hiding, done being anyone's victim. The widow Hart was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd found her strength in the crucible of the West, and God help anyone who threatened what she'd claimed as hers. The makeshift courthouse in Cheyenne Forks had seen many trials, but none had packed the room like this one. Every seat was filled, men standing along the walls, women fanning themselves in the stifling heat. At the defendant's table, Silas Kincaid sat like a cobra coiled to strike, his imported lawyer from Laramie shuffling papers with practiced efficiency. Judge William Thornton, the circuit judge brought in for the trial, banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, I'll clear this courtroom if I have to." Cole sat in the front row, Lila beside him, her hand steady in his despite the weight of every eye in the room. Behind them, Eli leaned forward, his presence a solid wall of support. The prosecutor, a young man named Harrison Finch, looked nervous but determined as he rose to present the evidence. "Your Honor," Finch began, "we will prove that Mr. Kincaid has been systematically laundering money for criminal organizations, including the notorious Red Sash Gang, through his legitimate business enterprises." Kincaid's lawyer, Cornelius Ashford, stood immediately empty. "Objection. These are merely the vindictive accusations of a woman of questionable reputation and the family that has harbored her." "Your Honor," Finch countered, "Mrs. Hart risked her life to obtain documentary evidence of these crimes. Her reputation is not on trial here." Judge Thornton's eyes narrowed. "Proceed, Mr. Finch. But stick to facts, not character assassination from either side." For the next hour, Finch methodically presented the ledgers Lila had copied, explaining the coded entries, the false names, the money trails. The crowd murmured as the scope of Kincaid's operation became clear. Cattle-rustling profits washed through land deals, stolen payrolls converted to railroad investments, blood money transformed into respectable wealth. When Lila took the stand, the room fell silent. She wore a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back, looking every inch the respectable widow rather than the woman who'd outrun Kincaid's gunmen through the streets. "Mrs. Hart," Finch began gently, "please tell the court how you came to work for Mr. Kincaid." Lila's voice was clear and steady. "I needed employment. My reputation had been damaged by false accusations, and Mr. Kincaid was one of the few willing to hire me." "And what did you discover during your employment?" "I found 2 sets of books, one for public inspection, one recording illegal transactions. She detailed her discoveries with the precision of a trained accountant, never embellishing, never wavering. Ashford rose for cross-examination, his smile sharp as a skinning knife. Mrs. Hart, is it true your late husband was associated with criminals? He was. And is it true you fled Kansas under suspicious circumstances? I fled Kansas because the men who killed my husband threatened my life. So you say, but isn't it possible you knew about the stolen money, that you came here seeking new opportunities for your criminal endeavors? Lila met his gaze steadily. No, sir. I came here seeking safety and honest work. I found both at the Maddox Ranch. Ah, yes, the Maddox Ranch? Ashford's tone turned insinuating. Where you been living under the protection of young Mr. Maddox? Some might say you traded information for more than just safety. Cole started to rise, but Lila's voice cut through the room like a blade. Some might say many things, Mr. Ashford, but I'll tell you what I know for certain. I watched my husband die for his greed and lies. I've been hunted, threatened, and slandered, but I've also found people willing to stand for what's right, even when it costs them. If that makes me a criminal in your eyes, so be it. The crowd stirred, and Judge Thornton gavelled for order. Mr. Ashford, do you have any questions relevant to the charges against your client? As the lawyer retreated, Sheriff Calder took the stand, confirming the arrest of several Red Sash members who'd corroborated the money laundering scheme. Then came the federal marshal, presenting evidence of similar operations in other territories, all traced back to Kincaid. The tide was turning, and Kincaid knew it. During a recess, Cole saw him conferring urgently with his men outside. Marcus Webb was among them, his arm bandaged where Lila had cut him, his eyes promising violence. Trouble coming, Eli murmured, having noticed the same thing. That night, it came. Cole was keeping watch at the ranch when he saw the flames, the hay barn erupting in orange light, fire racing through the drought-dry fodder. As the ranch hands rushed to fight the blaze, shots rang out from the darkness. "It's a raid!" Tom Bradley shouted, returning fire at muzzle flashes among the rocks. Cole found Lila already at a window, Winchester in hand. "They're trying to burn us out," she said, sighting down the barrel. "Let them try." The battle raged as the barn burned, casting wild shadows across the yard. Kincaid's men had come in force, 8 or 10 gunmen, trying to overwhelm the defenders. But the ranch hands fought with the fury of men protecting their home. Eli, despite his age, dropped 2 attackers with careful shots. Jed Hawkins, his shoulder still weak from the earlier fight, fired his pistol one-handed, and Lila was deadly calm, picking targets with methodical precision. It was she who spotted Marcus Webb trying to flank them, creeping toward the house with a torch. Her shot took him in the leg, sending him sprawling. As he tried to crawl away, she fired again, the bullet kicking up dust inches from his head. "The next one won't miss. Webb," she called out. "You want to burn something? Try hell." The attack faltered as their leader fell. Someone shouted retreat, and Kincaid's men melted back into the darkness, dragging their wounded. The barn was lost, but the house stood. And more importantly, everyone was alive. Sheriff Calder arrived at dawn with a posse, finding the ranch hands still putting out spot fires. "Kincaid's bolted," he reported. "Tried to empty his safe and run. We caught him at the stage station." "And his men?" Cole asked. "Scattered like quail. Webb's in custody. That leg wound of his slowed him down considerable." Calder tipped his hat to Lila. "Fine shooting, ma'am." The trial resumed with Kincaid in chains and half the town sporting bruises from the night's violence. His lawyer tried to claim the raid was unauthorized, that desperate men had acted without Kincaid's knowledge. But the federal marshal produced a witness, one of Kincaid's own men, turned state's evidence to save his neck. The verdict came swift guilty on all counts. As they led Kincaid away, he turned to stare at Lila with poisonous hatred. "This isn't over," he called out. You think you've won? I've got friends, influence. You've got 20 years in federal prison. Judge Thornton interrupted. Maybe 30 if you keep talking. Get him out of my courtroom. Outside, as the crowd dispersed, Lila stood between Cole and Eli, looking at the scorched earth where the barn had stood. We'll rebuild, Eli said gruffly. Better than before. With what money? Cole asked. The drought, the fights were about broke. Eli almost smiled. Didn't you hear there's a substantial reward for breaking up the money laundering ring? Split between the ranch and Mrs. Hard here. It should see us through. Lila looked up sharply. I don't want... You earned it. Eli cut her off. Every penny, besides. His voice softened slightly. You're family now, or will be soon enough. That evening, as they watched the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, Lila leaned against Cole on the porch steps. It's over, she said, wonder in her voice. Really over. This part is... Cole agreed. Kincaid's done. The red sash is broken. But there'll be other challenges. Drought's not broke yet. Railroad's still pushing. Life's still hard out here. I know. She turned to look at him. But we'll face them together. No more running, no more hiding, just building something worth keeping. Speaking of building, Cole pulled out a folded paper. Reverend Palmer says he can perform the ceremony next Sunday, unless you want to wait. I've done enough waiting. Lila interrupted. Sunday's perfect. As the first stars appeared, they sat in comfortable silence. The barn's foundation still smoldered, a reminder of the price of standing firm. But the house stood strong. The land endured, and love had proven tougher than fear or greed or violence. You know what's funny? Lila said suddenly. What's that? That first night in the saloon. When you signed that paper for me, everyone said you were gambling your heart on a stranger. Best bet I ever made, Cole said, pulling her closer. Even with everything it cost, everything we've been through. Especially then. Easy wins don't mean much. It's the hard-fought ones that matter. In the distance, a coyote called, and another answered not a lament this time, but a declaration of survival, of territory claimed and held against all odds. The West would continue to test them. Cole knew it would bring drought and storm, hardship and loss. But it would also bring mornings when the grass sparkled with dew, evenings when the sky burned like glory, and nights when the woman you loved sat beside you, no longer a stranger, but a partner in every sense. The rancher's son had gambled his heart and won more than he'd ever dared hope, not just love, but a woman whose courage matched the land itself, wild and beautiful, and absolutely worth the risk. The news of Kincaid's conviction spread through the territory like wildfire, and with it came an unexpected shift in the social winds of Cheyenne Forks. The same people who had whispered behind raised fans now nodded respectfully when Lila passed. Justice, it seemed, had a way of revising history, but respect couldn't heal all wounds. Eli lay in the downstairs bedroom. His breathing labored from the bullet that had found him during the raid, a wound Cole hadn't even known about until his father collapsed the morning after the fight. Doc Hutchins had dug out the lead, but infection had set in. And now Eli fought a different kind of battle. Stubborn fool, Maria muttered, carrying fresh bandages from the kitchen. Hiding a bullet wound like a boy hiding a broken window. Cole sat by his father's bed, watching the rise and fall of the coverlet. Eli's eyes opened, focusing with effort. Stop looking like I'm already in the ground. Eli rasped. You hit it, Cole said. Through the whole trial. You sat there bleeding inside. Had to see it through. Eli's hand moved weakly on the coverlet. Couldn't let them think they'd beaten us. Pa, listen. Eli's voice grew stronger with urgency. The ranch, it's yours now. Yours and Lila's. Papers are in the desk, already signed. You're going to be fine, Doc Hutchins said. Doc Hutchins is a drunk and an optimist. Eli almost smiled. I know what I know. Boy, this land, it takes its price from all of us. But it gives back too, if you're strong enough to hold it. Over the next days, the ranch held its breath. Lila barely left Eli's side, nursing him with the same fierce determination she'd brought to everything else. She spooned broth between his cracked lips, changed his bandages, and when fever took him, bathed his face with cool water through the long nights. "Why?" Eli asked during a lucid moment. "After how I treated you?" "Because you're family," Lila said simply, "and because you raised a son worth loving. That doesn't happen by accident." Eli studied her face, then reached up with a trembling hand to touch her cheek. "I was wrong about you. Forgive a foolish old man." "There's nothing to forgive. There is. I called you poison. A curse." His voice dropped to a whisper. "But you were the medicine this place needed. This family needed." That night, with rain finally breaking the drought in sheets of silver, Eli Maddox closed his eyes for the last time. He went quietly, his son's hand in his right, his daughter-in-law's in his left, the family he'd fought so hard to protect finally whole. Even as he left it, they buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch, next to Cole's mother, as the rain turned the earth soft and forgiving. Half the county came. Despite the mud ranchers who'd respected Eli's integrity, townspeople who'd relied on his strength, even some who'd opposed him but recognized the passing of an era. Reverend Palmer spoke of duty and sacrifice, but it was old Sam Crenshaw who captured the truth. Eli Maddox was hard as this land because he had to be, but underneath, he loved it every rock, every blade of grass, every soul tough enough to make a stand on it. That's his legacy. That's what lives on. After the service, as people gathered at the house, Cole found himself accepting condolences he barely heard. His mind was on the weight of what had been passed to him, not just the ranch, but the responsibility of living up to his father's example while finding his own way. Emma Patterson approached Lila near the kitchen, no longer the nervous girl from town, but a young woman with new steel in her spine. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "After that day at the store, I insisted Charles teach me to shoot. It changed things between us." "For the better?" Lila asked. Emma's smile was rueful. He didn't like it at first, but when I stood up to him about his drinking, really stood up, he listened. "We're working on things." "That's all any of us can do," Lila said. "Work on things, one day at a time." As the gathering wound down, a stranger arrived, a thin man in a city suit, looking uncomfortable on horseback. He introduced himself as James Morrison from the railroad company. "My condolences on your loss," he said to Cole. "But I'm afraid business doesn't pause for grief. The railroad still needs right-of-way through your land." "Not today," Tom Bradley said, stepping forward. "Have some respect, man." "It's all right, Tom." Cole faced Morrison. "What's your offer?" "Same as before, market price for the strip we need, plus guaranteed shipping rates for your cattle." "And if we refuse?" Morrison's expression hardened. "Then we'll go around. Build through Bennett's land instead. Your cattle will have to travel 40 miles extra to reach the railhead, in drought years." He didn't need to finish. 40 miles could mean the difference between profit and ruin. "We'll think on it," Cole said. "Come back in a week." After Morrison left, Cole and Lila walked to Eli's grave. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp with the smell of sage. "What would he want?" Lila asked. "He'd want the ranch to survive, but he'd also want it done right, not under threat." Cole picked up a handful of wet earth, letting it fall through his fingers. "The railroad's coming whether we like it or not. Question is, do we work with them or against them?" "There might be a third way," Lila said thoughtfully. "What if we don't just give them right of way? What if we negotiate for a station here? A cattle loading facility, turn the railroad from a threat into an asset." Cole looked at her with new appreciation. That's That could work, but it would take investment money we don't have. The reward money from Kincaid's conviction. Plus, I've been thinking we could offer partnerships to smaller ranchers, pool resources, share the loading facilities, make it a community venture instead of just Maddox land. It was exactly the kind of forward-thinking Eli would have resisted, but ultimately respected. Cole pulled Lila close, feeling the future reshape itself around them. "Partners," he said, "in everything." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A small wagon approached, and Cole recognized several people from town. Mrs. Henderson from the general store, Banker Patterson and his wife, even Mrs. Palmer from the church. "We've come to apologize," Mrs. Henderson said without preamble. "To Mrs. Maddox specifically. We judged hastily and spoke cruelly. You proved yourself a woman of courage and principle, and we were small." Lila stood very straight, her hand finding Cole's. "We all do what we think best at the time. I hold no grudges." "Then you're more generous than we deserve," Mrs. Palmer added. "We've brought some things: fabric, preserves, seeds for a kitchen garden. Small gestures, but sincere." As the women unloaded their gifts, chattering about planting seasons and recipe exchanges, Cole saw his wife truly accepted into the community that had once shunned her. It had taken bullets and trials, fire and death, but she'd earned her place through sheer force of will. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching storm clouds build again on the horizon, Lila pulled out 2 items: the wooden box she'd arrived with and her old wedding ring from Nathan. "I want to bury these," she said, "with your father. If you don't mind, let the past rest with someone who understood the weight of it." They climbed the hill together as lightning flickered in the distance, at Eli's fresh grave. Lila dug a small hole and placed both items inside. "Nathan's ring bound me to fear and running," she said, "but that's over now. I'm Lila Maddox, wife of Cole, daughter of Eli in all the ways that matter. This is my land now, my home, my fight." She covered the items with earth, patting it smooth. When she stood, Cole saw tears on her face, but also peace, the kind that comes from finally laying ghosts to rest. Thunder rumbled closer, and they hurried back to the house. As the storm broke, washing the land clean once more, they stood together in the doorway, watching nature's power remake the world. "The railroad man comes back in a week," Cole said. "We'll need to have our terms ready." "We will. Jim Baker's already interested in the loading facility idea. The Johnsons, too." Lila leaned into him. "Your father built something worth saving. Now we make it worth sharing." "He would have hated the meetings," Cole said with a slight smile. "All that talking, negotiating." "But he would have loved the result: the ranch secure, the community stronger." She turned to face him. "We'll make mistakes, different ones than his, but mistakes nonetheless, as long as we make them together." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the land in stark relief, harsh and beautiful, demanding and generous, forever testing those who dared call it home. In the morning, there would be damage to assess, repairs to make, a future to build from the foundational stones of the past. But tonight, Cole and Lila Maddox stood in the doorway of their inheritance, no longer strangers to each other or to the land that had forged them. The rancher's son had gambled his heart and won not just love, but a partner strong enough to help him carry the weight of legacy into an uncertain but promising tomorrow. In the distance, coyotes sang to the storm, and this time, Lila sang back not with her voice, but with her presence, her permanence, her declaration that this place, these people, this life was hers to claim and defend. A year had passed since they'd buried Eli on the hill, and the land had transformed. Where drought had painted everything brown and dying, now green grass rippled like water in the wind. The new calves stood on wobbly legs in the morning sun, their mothers watching with patient eyes as life renewed itself in its eternal cycle. Cole stood at the loading platform they'd built where the railroad cut through their land, watching as cattle from 3 different ranches were loaded into cars bound for eastern markets. The Maddox Cattle Collective, Lila's idea, his sweat, their neighbors' trust had become reality. 28 head from the Bakers, 35 from the Johnsons. Tom Bradley called out, making notes on his clipboard. He'd become their operations manager, his easy way with people smoothing the inevitable disputes that arose when independent ranchers tried to work together. And 40 of our own, Cole added, satisfaction in his voice. At fair prices through their own facility. Without Kincaid's interference or the railroad's exploitation, they were finally seeing real profit. A rider approached from town Sam Crenshaw's grandson, Billy, who'd taken over mail delivery. "Letter for Mrs. Maddox," he called out, handing down an envelope. Cole recognized the careful handwriting even before Lila opened it. Emma Patterson had been corresponding regularly since starting her own small school for ranch children. "She's coming to visit next week," Lila said, scanning the contents. "Bringing 3 new students who want to learn their letters." She looked up at Cole with that mixture of pride and humility he'd come to love. "Never thought I'd be teaching teachers." "You've taught all of us something," Cole said, meaning it. That evening, they hosted the monthly collective meeting in their main room, where once only ranch hands had gathered. Now the space filled with neighboring families. Children playing at their parents' feet while adults discussed grazing rotations and market prices. "Railroad wants to expand the spur," Jim Baker reported. "At a second loading platform, they're offering good terms. Because we proved we could work without them," Johnson added with satisfaction. "Amazing how reasonable folks get when you're not begging." As the meeting progressed, Cole watched Lila move through the room, refilling coffee cups, settling disputes with quiet words, her presence a calm center to the controlled chaos. She'd grown into her role as naturally as grass after rain. Later, as the families departed, old Sam Crenshaw lingered. "Your PA would be proud," he told Cole. "Maybe not of all the talking and committee work, but of what it's built. Security, community, future." He was a man of his time. Cole replied, "This is ours." Wise words. Sam shifted his weight, then added quietly, "There's a stranger in town. Been asking about the widow Hart. Thought you should know." Cole's hand moved instinctively toward his gun, old habits dying hard. "Red sash." "Don't think so. City fella, nervous type. Says he's a lawyer from Kansas." That night, Cole told Lila about the stranger. She received the news calmly, though he saw her hands tighten on her sewing. "I suppose the past isn't quite finished with us," she said. "We'll face it together, like always." The lawyer arrived the next morning in a hired buggy, dust covering his black suit despite his obvious efforts to stay clean. He introduced himself as Theodore Whitman from the firm of Whitman and Associates, Kansas City. "Mrs. Hart, excuse me, Mrs. Maddox," he began, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "I've been searching for you for months. I represent the estate of one Margaret Bellwether." Lila frowned. "I don't know any Margaret Bellwether." "She was your late husband's maternal aunt. Lived in Boston. She passed 6 months ago and, having no direct heirs, left her estate to be divided among blood relatives and their spouses." "Nathan never mentioned an aunt in Boston," Lila said carefully. "They were estranged. She disapproved of his lifestyle choices." Whitman cleared his throat delicately. "However, she believed in family duty. The estate is modest but not insignificant. Your portion would be approximately $3,000. Cole and Lila exchanged glances. It was enough to expand their operations, maybe bring water to the dry sections of the ranch, secure their future even further. "What's required?" Cole asked. Simply proof of identity and marriage to Nathan Hart. Then I can release the funds. Lila stood slowly. Mr. Whitman, I appreciate your diligence in finding me, but I need you to understand something. She moved to the mantel where her marriage certificate to Cole was displayed. I am Lila Maddox. I was once Lila Hart. Yes, but that woman frightened, running, dependent on others' charity, she's gone. I don't understand. You're refusing the inheritance. No. Lila's voice was firm. I'll take it. Nathan's aunt wanted family to have it, and I'll honor that, but not as Lila Hart, as Lila Maddox, with my husband Cole, for our ranch and our community. Can your papers reflect that? Whitman adjusted his spectacles. Most irregular, but yes, I suppose they can. As they signed the papers, Cole felt the last chain of Lila's past transform into a tool for their future. Even Nathan's shadow, in the end, had become part of the foundation they were building. Winter came gentle that year, snow falling soft as feathers, blanketing the land in temporary peace. On Christmas Eve, the ranch house filled again, but this time with celebration. The loading facility had brought prosperity to all the collective members. Children who'd been thin with hunger now had round cheeks and new clothes. Emma Patterson played carols on the small piano they'd hauled from town, her husband Charles turning the pages with the newly steady hands. He'd been sober 6 months now, working as the collective's bookkeeper, using skills drink had nearly drowned. It's accountability, he'd told Cole, knowing others depend on me. It helps. Near midnight, as the party wound down, Lila stepped outside for air. Cole found her by the corral, watching the horses stand patient in the falling snow. Remembering, he asked. Yes, that first night, the dust storm, Greer's threats. I was so certain I'd brought nothing but trouble to your door. You brought change. Not all of it easy, but all of it necessary. She turned to him, snowflakes catching in her hair. I've been thinking about what your father said about the land taking its price. We've paid in blood, in sweat, in sorrow, but look what we've gotten back. Worth the gamble. Every roll of the dice. She smiled, that fierce, bright expression that had first caught his attention. Though I think we're done with gambling now. What we have is built on certainties, hard work, mutual trust, shared purpose, and love. Cole added, don't forget love. As if I could. They stood together as the snow continued to fall, transforming the harsh landscape into something softer, though no less real. In the house behind them, friends and neighbors celebrated community. On the hill above, Eli rested beneath stone and earth, his legacy living on in different forms than he'd imagined, but no less honored. There's something else, Lila said quietly. Something I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you. Cole waited, knowing her rhythms by now. Maria thinks, and I agree, that come summer, there'll be another Maddox on the ranch. The words took a moment to sink in. Then Cole whooped loud enough to startle the horses, lifting Lila and spinning her in the snow despite her laughing protests. A baby, he said wonderingly when he set her down. Our baby. Our future, she corrected. Another gamble, I suppose, but one I'm ready for. As they walked back to the house, hand in hand through the gentle snow, Cole thought about the journey that had brought them here. A desperate widow seeking shelter, a rancher's son making an impulsive choice, a community learning to transform and grow. None of it had been easy. The land didn't allow easy, but it allowed hope and growth and the kind of love that strengthened rather than softened those who found it. They'd tested each other, Cole, Lila, and this unforgiving country, and discovered they were all stronger for the testing. Inside, their guests sang one last carol before departing into the peaceful night. Tom Bradley raised a final toast. To the Maddoxes, who showed us that sometimes the biggest gambles pay the richest rewards. To community, Lila countered, raising her own glass of cider. to neighbors who become family, to land that teaches us strength, to futures we build together. As the evening ended and quiet settled over the ranch, Cole and Lila stood in their doorway one last time, watching the snow erase the harsh edges of the world, making everything new and full of possibility. "Rancher's son gambled his heart on a stranger," Cole murmured, repeating the old phrase with new appreciation, "and won a dangerous love with a widow beauty." "Not dangerous anymore," Lila said, leaning into his warmth, "just deep and true and tested by fire." "The best kind," Cole agreed. In the distance, a coyote called through the falling snow, not a lament or a warning, but a simple declaration of existence, of survival, of life continuing despite all odds. The sound carried across the white blanketed range, past the loading platforms that promised prosperity, over the graves that held memory, through the homes where children slept safe and fed. It was the song of the West itself, harsh and beautiful, demanding and generous, forever testing those who dared to love it. Cole and Lila had passed that test, together, and built something worth more than all the gold in California, a home, a community, a future. The gamble had paid off in ways neither could have imagined that dusty night in the Silver Dollar Saloon. But then, the best gambles always did not in easy winnings, but in the hard-won treasures of loyalty, courage, and love strong enough to weather any storm. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Cole and Lila's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening from today? Please share in the comments below. I love connecting with listeners from all around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more authentic tales of courage, love, and survival from the American frontier. What did you think of Cole's gamble and Lila's transformation? Share your thoughts below.